Life podcast. I'm Landon Thomas, joined by my co-host Shahnavaz, Makhani. Shahnavaz, what is it, 8 games left?
8 games left.
So we're down the wire to the season. Obviously, there's a lot to play for. In the words of Anthony Davis, obviously he's back in he played 2 of the last 3 games. So this episode, we're going to be talking about Anthony Davis' return. What does it do for the Mavs? And not only just this season, but, risk reward for the rest of the season and the future with him coming back off of an injury. And then also Brandon Williams taking advantage of his opportunity. Hopefully this is the last time or last season he ever plays in the G League. And then also we'll be talking about the standings, the last stretch of the season. So Shahnavaz will not only talk about the Mavs schedule, but just the Kings and the Suns, who they're fighting with as well. So Shahnavaz, I guess we can talk about Anthony Davis to start it off. That's the biggest news recently with all the injuries going on in the positive way. What is the motive for coming back when they were, as of a couple days ago, out of the play-in, not even the playoffs, but play-in. And, he's coming off a big injury, and there's only a handful of games left. So what is your thought process? Because he did say after the first game he came back that he said, quote unquote, "I'm not the one to throw in the towel and sit down. I felt good enough to play. We got goals in mind." Notice that he says we instead of, this team. Even though we are undermanned, not 100% healthy, guys are coming back live and Gaff, who we can mention in a little bit. I want to make sure I have rhythm if we are able to get in the play-in. So Shahnavaz, what's your thoughts on him coming back, and not only coming back and the team?
Yeah, for Anthony Davis, I think he felt he had to come back after, with everything that's happened with the trade and, him coming in and, the injury happening. You can look back and wonder what would have happened had he not gotten hurt, right? As dominant as he was against the Rockets, and even the last 2 games he's played, even though, it wasn't a great game against Orlando, but, Mavericks still won that game. So I think for him on a personal level, just being a vet, wanting to get out there, play with his teammates, put some of that to rest of, the trade and kind of putting all that behind you and just going out and playing basketball. And I think Spencer Dinwiddie came out, I think it was today or yesterday, with, this is Anthony Davis we're talking about. This is one of the top 3 two-way players in the league. He's like, I understand, the trade happens and things like that, but, you got to forget that this is a all-time, one of the 75 best players in NBA history that you've got on your team now. So I think for him, he wanted to come back. Even if the Mavericks were to, had they, quote unquote tanked, like they did a couple of years ago to get Derek Lively, you're still looking at, a 10th pick, 11th pick. The Dallas doesn't really have a shot to move up. They've never moved up in the lottery before. So, why not? If Gaff and Lively are going to come back, why not get your feet wet, get into a rhythm? Anything can happen in the playoffs. We've seen it. We've seen it time and time again. Miami as a play-in team makes the NBA Finals, right? We've seen it happen with Golden State, making a finals run, being a lower seeded team. So matchup depending, who knows when the season ends who the Mavericks are going to play, but to have Anthony Davis out there with, giving you a shot to win, I think it's just a vet move for him. I think it's classy, and I think he wants, he understands that he's got to be out there to kind of quiet down some of the criticism that, that not, unfairly that he's been facing.
I agree with you 100%, just on the fact that he's not only proving it to himself, he's proving it to the fans. And I think that's a deeper level when you're going out there trying to show, and like you said, he's a top 75 player in the NBA, appointed him a top 75 player, and he just turned 32. Obviously, you're looking at the comparison to Luka and what he's done at his age. When you look at Anthony Davis alone, he's one of the best we've ever seen. He is the originator. I know that Porzingis gets the unicorn nickname, but when you look at Anthony Davis' game and his accolades, he is the unicorn, because he's the unibrow. But, he's a ultimate game changer for a team. He's a champion, and he performs when he's healthy. And that's what just his presence alone. Obviously, you can watch the bad game against the Magic, but just his presence alone. Look at the other teammates. When he plays, the other teammates have a spirit about them that they're going to be okay. And obviously, when the players that have been playing that have not been injured, they are giving their all to at least keep the Mavs afloat. And you like to see that because you also have to see that because Nico said in the front office ownership, this is win now. It'll be contradiction to tank right after a trade of that magnitude and then saying this is win now and then okay we're going to tank. Even with injuries, you got to give it your all. And now you're seeing it with players coming back, hopefully with the other two bigs as well, because they are playing him at power forward unless they
Yep.
have to play him at center just because Kai Jones, who knows what his status is, and then also Dwight Powell, he just got back, a few weeks ago. So you, you're starting to see what he wants to do here in Dallas is play power forward and play his game. And you kind of see what transpired in LA as well, because he's trying to prove that, hey, me at power forward wins these games and wins big games. And I get back to myself. Obviously that was a freak injury, but if if it was something that was normal, okay, but that was a freak injury. So you want to see him have some extended time at the power forward with the Mavericks and see where it can take him. Because, like you said, he could have waited till the offseason and then have a great season next season, but he had to come back to prove that he is Anthony Davis. Like he's reminding people, yeah, you're talking about one side of the trade, but I'm also a first ballot Hall of Fame player, and I'm still 32, so I still got some years in front of me as well as behind me.
Yeah, and we've seen the success that the Lakers had playing him at the four. That's when they won the championship a few years ago. And so I
Yeah,
think you brought up a good point. I think it also motivates the other players. And we've seen it the last the last two games that he's played, where it just feels different, right? I think for the
yeah.
players also, they know that they've got now, especially with Kyrie out, they've got the best player on the floor, and they can match up with anybody that they're playing against. So I think it motivates everyone else on the team. I think you've seen the offense get into a better rhythm, as opposed to just kind of playing iso ball against opponents. And
Mhm.
defensively, I mean, we know what he's capable of, and we've seen, even with the injuries, we've seen the Mavericks defense be almost at an elite level when he's in the lineup. So I think, I don't know, if I doubt he's going to play all 8 games remaining in the season, but you can pretty much chalk up that the Mavericks are going to be super competitive in the games that he does play down the stretch here.
Yeah, and they got lucky with the schedule that these, at least the near term games, don't have any date. I mean, don't have any back to backs. So hopefully you can see him play some of these games because it's very vital for him to play because we'll talk about later in the podcast about just where they're at in the standings and how many games are left. Each game matters. Even not only that, it's just the quality of teams. If you're looking at the schedule alone, you're like, oh, okay, these should be wins with Anthony Davis on the floor for the Mavs. But you know, the Bulls are playing really good right now.
Yep.
Obviously, that collapse with the Lakers and those miraculous shots in the comeback, but they've been playing well before that. Like they're not a team to take lightly. So they're going to have to lock in against the Bulls, and they're going to have to lock in against the Nets. Obviously, you just beat them, and they're going to come back for vengeance. And they're very competitive. Like with their record alone, they have not been very good, and they had a lot of injuries as well, and a lot of things going on with their team as well. But they're very competitive when they play, and you can't take that team lightly. And then the Hawks, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with the Hawks? They're very streaky. They're either really good or really bad. But these games are very vital for this team, and I like seeing Anthony Davis back because you there's a thin line between getting mad at the organization, which is valid. You can do that all day. I mean, everybody does that. You should get mad at the organization if you feel that way. But the players, it gets lost with the players. Like they
Yeah.
are human beings as well. Like you don't see the behind the scenes, like just talking to them in the hallways or just seeing the other side of them with their families, like that side of them. But it comes with the territory. They're professional athletes, but it's good to see Anthony Davis just getting the recognition that he does deserve, and I think we'll see it more when he has those big games like he did the first one. So Shahnavaz, Brandon Williams, my
Whew.
goodness. I mean, do the Mavs have any money left? Or do the Mavs have any spots left for next season? Obviously, his games are coming down. I think it's one more game that he has for the rest of the season, which sucks because if they make the play in, you want Brandon Williams on the
Yeah.
court because he's been special. Like even kids playing him over Hardy and some other guys as well, just minutes wise, because he is getting minutes. When you look at his play, let's just look at March. 27 minutes per game. He's shooting 55.3% from the floor. He's averaging 4.7 assists, and he's averaging 17 points a game and 3.6 rebounds in the month of March. 10 games for him. So, Shahnavaz, what have you seen from Brandon Williams, and what do you look forward to? I mean, obviously he only has one game, but what do you look forward to him and his career moving forward?
I mean, I think he definitely has a spot on this team. I mean, I think he's proven it. You know, and we've talked a lot over the last few years about, you know, players seizing their opportunities and you know, the mishaps with Josh Green, and now it feels like he's taking over Jaden Hardy's role. You know, Jaden Hardy is continued to struggle, and it's every time, you know, you watch him, it feels like it's a, you know, it's you know, a roller coaster ride. You know, with you know, the ball handling and the miscues and the turnovers, and then he'll come out and score 22 off the bench against, you know, against Orlando. And so, you know, you talk about streaky. I mean, that Jaden Hardy's kind of the definition of that. But Brandon Williams, I think, has 100% solidified a spot on this roster. I mean, he could be, you know, a legit, I think, backup guard, you know, for you next year, you know, with Spencer Dinwiddie being a free agent. You know, now you can possibly move off Jaden Hardy, you know, when his contract extension kicks in. You know, that's a very movable piece. You know, we figure, you know, we assume Dallas is going to make moves in the offseason to kind of fill out the roster alongside Kyrie and AD. But, you know, while Kyrie's rehabbing, I mean, Brandon Williams can be a solid backup, you know, point guard, you know, for this team. I think he's clearly proven it. And I think, you know, now going forward, I mean, you know that you've got that option. You know, you've got a guy who is comfortable in his role, guy who's spent time with the team. The coaching staff clearly is you know, is playing him more, like you said. So they've got confidence in him and trust in him. I think that, you know, I think that kind of takes care of the, you know, one missing piece that you needed over the course of the offseason. You know, and like you said, it sucks that he's only going to get one more game here, and we're not going to get to see him, you know, if the Mavs make the play in. But, you know, he's definitely seized his opportunity. I mean, he's a joy to watch. It's awesome. I mean, he's been super efficient. He makes the right plays. It feels like, you know, with Jaden Hardy, he's got some head scratching turnovers. It feels like Brandon Williams is always making the right play, making the right decision. And I think you're seeing that in you know, the fact that he's playing a lot more minutes now.
Yeah, I agree. It's the beauty in disguise, just from him taking advantage of opportunities, but also the coaching staff giving him the opportunities. You know, because yeah, they're undermanned, but he doesn't have to play this many minutes. He doesn't have to, you know, have this much usage when he plays in those minutes, and that's one thing that I really like to see. I like that you said, you know, that he can be a backup point guard because he really can. And you know, you're at a point in time, if you're Nico Harrison, where you have to move in a different way. Like, I mean, I'm talking about Brandon Williams because, like you just said, Spencer is on a 1-year deal, and then you also have Exum, who plays great when he's healthy, but he just keeps getting injured, and it's kind of turned into the Maxi where, are we going to have him for the playoffs? You know,
Yeah.
Maxi Kleba. So you could really have. I mean, he's ready for prime time. Obviously, you see him playing against good teams and playing against bad teams, and his production is similar. So I think you definitely have to make that a focus. Obviously, like you said, they're going to be looking everywhere to get this team in the best position that they can to win a championship. Obviously, with the trade that you make and in the comments that you make, and you know, you're really focusing on Kyrie and AD, and especially with Kyrie being out the beginning of next season, you need a guy like Brandon Williams who can step in, and he's very calm, cool, collected. He's been through the grind. You
Yeah.
know, he's been up and down G League, and he's tired of it. You know, he wants to stay in the league, and he's showing that he wants to stay in the league. And I like that you said, you know, you brought up Hardy because with the turnovers and the playmaking. And I think that's the problem it's two things. I think development wise and also Hardy as well. So I think it's the coaches in Hardy because they're using him wrong. Like Brandon Williams he can be a point guard. He is a point guard.
Yeah.
You know, he can run a offense and he can give it his all. He can dribble drive so good. And that's the problem with Hardy. They try to force him. He's like a combo guard, but they're trying to make him be more of a point guard. And you know, instead of just like a Mario Chalmers
Yeah,
type
you
of
need to
point guard.
get the ball out of his hands and let him shoot.
Exactly, and that's the problem. They're not putting him in the best position to succeed because he's actually a better shooter than Brandon Williams.
Yeah.
He's like you said, he's one of the streakiest guys in the league. Like he could go on a 10-0, 12-0 run by himself when he's on. But when you put him in a point guard role or you ask him to dribble, it worked in the G League and worked in high school, but in the NBA, that's just not his forte. Like that's
Yeah.
what happens. Some things are good when you're younger, but when you play the best of the best, you got to focus on your strengths. And I think if they made him a spot up shooter, he would actually succeed way more than what he's doing now, is trying to be a combo guard or trying to run the offense. Just let him shoot. Just give him spot up jump shots. Put him in the Klay Thompson role.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think with the injuries now, he's, you know, he kind of has to play that role, right?
Yep, true.
Of
True.
you know, being a ball handler and stuff. But I think you're getting to a point where you're seeing what you have with him. You know, it's been 3 years already. You know, you kind of just either you put him in the right position to succeed, or you kind of just have to cut your losses. You know, I mean, I don't know what else at this point, you know, the Mavericks can do with him. I mean, I feel like they've given him those opportunities, right, to be, you know, kind of that Klay Thompson, Tim Hardaway Jr.-esque player off the bench, and he just hasn't kind of taken that by the horns and run with it. You know, he's struggled a lot, and so I think with the emergence of Brandon Williams now, that makes that decision a little bit easier if you were to move off of him, right? Because, like you said, if you're going to build this roster to win now, right, you have to evaluate, is Jaden Hardy a part of that, or is he still, you know, can you still afford to play him and get him comfortable and, you know, kind of get him into a rhythm? Like, you know, is that where you see the team going forward, or, you know, is it more valuable to move him off and get a piece in that kind of fits around that particular timeline? That's what Dallas is going to have to figure out.
Yeah, they really do, because it's a difficult position because you're also not thinking play and production. You're also thinking finances.
Yeah.
So whatever other moves may be made, you know, you can bring Brandon Williams back at a cheaper deal, and you have the luxury to include Hardy in that deal to make the numbers work. So that's the key to it. But you also have to think Kyrie's out, so you might not want to give Brandon Williams, because if he's the backup point guard, he's gonna have to start until Kyrie comes back. So you might want to bring back Dinwiddie to just, you know, to run the show until Kyrie comes back, and then you have Brandon Williams as the backup. But there's just so many things involved into this as well. And it's a difficult position to be in because, like you said, they're in win now mode, but you also want to show growth to younger players, especially when your best players are older. Because, and then also you have to also think, if they keep, you know, their mid-20s guys, like, you know, obviously Gafford and PJ, if they don't make that big move and to just make a big three, then you also want some younger guys where they can balance the older guys like Klay, AD, and Kyrie. You want PJ to become that solid third option on the team, because he's done really well as of late before the injury again. And then also you want to have some guys, because Brandon Williams is 26. I know Hardy's like 20. Brandon Williams is 26, so he's still young, where he's not just, you want him to go to another team and shine. Like, you still want to keep that youth on your team just to balance the age of the team as well, with Lively and Gafford and PJ and those type of guys.
Yeah, I think it's just going to come down to seeing in the offseason what moves are available, right? And you know, if he's got to be included in the deal, you know, to make the money work, or if another team really thinks they can unlock his potential. I mean, it's all going to depend on what that looks like, right? I mean, he's not a player where I would say, no, he's off the table, like Lively. You know, like, I think Lively is a core piece that, you know, you can't get rid of. But, you know, Jaden Hardy, if it's a deal that makes the team better, I think you seriously have to consider it at that point.
Yeah, and if you don't, if he's on the roster next season, you have to put him in a position to succeed.
100%.
And I'm not just saying that's all the coaching fault. Obviously, Hardy, he could show growth in his game and play better and be more consistent and become a combo guard like a Jordan Clarkson or those type of guys. But if he's not showing growth in his ball handling and playmaking, because he does when he makes passes, he stops his dribble and he jumps and makes a pass and then he passes late
Yeah.
where it's a turnover. You're just showing where you're passing, and I just the point guard experiment should be done with, or the combo guard should be done with. Like he should be on the court with another playmaker and put him in the same sets as Klay Thompson, because when he's making shots, like he can make 4 threes in a row. If you really get him, he's on a burner. He's
Mhm.
going to make those shots. But if he's not making those shots, you can pull him out. So that's why I think you should put him in just a shooter type role. And like Kennard, all these top shooters in the league, you need to put him in those type of roles, and he could succeed more than what he's doing now. But Brandon Williams does give another guard on this roster, so you give the luxury in including him in the deal. So Shahnavaz, to end the podcast episode, a lot's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. So I'm glad that we are back. Standings. Where are the Mavs at? What is the schedule looking like in the teams that they're fighting against?
Yeah, so the Mavs right now are in 10th. They're half a game behind the Kings for the 9th seed. I think right now the Mavericks are going to be within that spot. That they're not going to be able to catch Minnesota. They're 5.5 back of the 8th seed, but the Mavericks are going to finish anywhere between 9th and 11th. And so you've got the Kings, the Mavs, rounding out the play-in, and then the Suns. The Mavs have the easier schedule, relative to the Kings and the Suns. I mean, they've we talked about they've got the Bulls, the Nets, the Hawks, and you've got both LA teams kind of sandwiched in there at the beginning of April, and then you end with the Raptors and Grizzlies, who just inexplicably fired their head coach.
My goodness.
So that's something. The Kings have a couple easy games. They've got the Wizards and Hornets, but they end with a gauntlet. I mean, they've got the Cavs, they've got the Pistons who are playing really, really well, the Nuggets and the Clippers. And then April 13th, the last game of the regular season, that's the Kings and the Suns both, they play each other that day. So that April 13th is going to dictate quite a bit. That may be for the 10th seed. That may be if everyone's tied. Remember the Suns have the tiebreaker over the Mavs. So that may be a situation where Dallas is hoping that Sacramento pulls off that win. It may be one of those two teams fighting for a spot in the play-in tournament as opposed to getting out, and being left out. It may not even matter, actually, looking at Phoenix's schedule, because they've got just a brutal stretch. They've got the Timberwolves, the Rockets, the Bucks. They end the year against the Celtics, Knicks, Warriors, and Thunder before they play the Kings. So
they're out.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to come down to Dallas and Sacramento, and who's going to host, that 9-10 play-in game. Pretty much is what it looks like just from a schedule perspective. So this last stretch, these last 2 weeks, is going to be really interesting to see. Dallas just has to keep doing what they've been doing the last week or so, pull out some wins, kind of, try not to fall behind. And with Phoenix's schedule, they've been playing better of late, but that's just a brutal stretch that they've got it. They potentially could fall out of the race to get into the play-in. So Dallas might not have much to worry about, and they should be comfortably in that 9th or 10th seed.
Yeah, I knew the Kings had a gauntlet at the end, but I didn't know anything about the Suns' schedule. That is brutal. Like,
Yeah.
My goodness. Like, at this point, you just hope for the best, because they don't even look good playing against bad teams. So imagine playing against those teams you just listed to end the season. They just having a disaster of a season. And I think you mentioned it earlier or off the podcast. That could be KD's last games with the Suns, and that's just a sad way to go out for the franchise, because just where they were a couple of years ago. Yep. And you can say that about the Mavs too, and the Kings. Like, these three teams were very good. Well, Mavs obviously last year, but all three were very good, just recently in this. It just shows you, and you just mentioned Memphis, like, that just shows you, expect the unpredictable, just expect the unexpected with the NBA. Like, no one
Anything
knows
can
what goes
happen.
on behind the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You think everything's peachy. It's not. And all I got to say is the Mavericks, if it does come down to the Kings and Mavericks, you want that ninth seed because those cowbells are infuriating.
Yes.
Infuriating. You can hear it on the TV. Imagine in the arena. It's just a place you don't want to play, especially with your season on the line. Obviously, they're NBA players. They played there before. They've played really well there before, but you don't want your season to come down to some cowbells. You want home crowd. You want people cheering on. And can you imagine Anthony Davis putting on a performance to get the Mavericks into another chance for 8 seed, and then you get to play Warriors or the Timberwolves for 8 seed. Like, can you imagine this picture ending of AD pulling the Mavs on his back to get in the playoffs, and then you have the Thunder the first round? That's one way to make the fans happy. I mean,
There you go.
if AD plays really well. All right, Shahnavaz, final word. You tell me, where do the Mavs end up?
I think they finished ninth. I think just with the schedule, I think the way they've been playing, if you get Lively and Gafford back, I think they're going to be ninth, and they'll host that play-in game against Sacramento in mid-April.
Okay, so where would they stand after that?
I mean, you got to play the Warriors. Yeah, if it's the Wolves, I would like the Mavs' chances. If it's the Warriors, I don't know. That's going to be, with Jimmy Butler, that's a tough matchup.
Especially in Golden State.
In Golden State, yeah.
So a lot to come the next 2 weeks. We'll definitely keep you informed. It's good to be back. It's very good to be back. A lot of things have been going on. Injuries. I got married. I got a new house.
Yeah.
Shahnavaz has been busy as always. So it's good. Like, the energy is coming back for the Mavs. Players are coming back for the Mavs.
There you go.
And we'll see what happens in the next 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Please follow us. You see our social on the screen, so make sure y'all follow us. And have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye, everyone.